I'm Jake, 32, and last month my life blew up when I ran into my estranged parents at a wedding, 6 years after they skipped my MIT graduation for my sister's ballet recital. I stood on the lawn of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, wearing a cap and gown that had cost me 4 years of sleep, sanity, and $160,000 in loans. The crowd buzzed around me, families cheering, graduates hugging, professors looking smug and nostalgic. I scanned the crowd for two faces I already knew wouldn't be there. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A single message. "Sweetie, we're so sorry, but Olivia's recital got moved to today. We'll make it up to you. Congratulations. Make it up to me." Like it was a dinner date. Like missing the single most important milestone of my life was a scheduling error they could fix with a visit and a smile. I got my degree summa cum laude in computer engineering. Patent pending project. Research award. I shook the dean's hand with a grin, smiled for the camera no one held for me, and walked off stage into a world where my parents were watching a community center ballet recital instead of watching me become the first in our family to graduate from college, let alone MIT. Later, Professor Anderson, my thesis advisor, found me alone by the campus fountain. "Your family couldn't make it?" he asked. I nodded and tried to play it cool. "They had a conflict." He didn't buy it. "Jake, you're one of the brightest students I've taught in 30 years. You deserved a crowd." Then he clapped my shoulder and walked away before I could crack. Back in my tiny off-campus apartment, still in full regalia, I checked my phone again. A voicemail. My mom's voice, chipper. Olivia was breathtaking. Her white tutu, oh my god, Jake, you should have seen it. Everyone said she stole the show. How was your little ceremony? My little ceremony. 4 years of backbreaking work reduced to an afterthought in a voicemail about Olivia's pirouettes. I said it was fine. Good. Your father recorded the whole thing. Want us to send the video? No, I didn't want the video. I didn't want their pity. I didn't want to be told, again, that Olivia needed them more because she was the sensitive one and I was the strong one. You've always been so independent, my mom added, as if that explained why I'd walked the biggest stage of my life alone. So I hung up. Then I blocked their numbers. Then their Facebooks. Then their email addresses. Then I called Rachel, my roommate, and asked her to tell them I needed space. That space turned into silence. The silence turned into years. And the next time I saw them? It wasn't planned. It was 6 years later, standing on a manicured lawn at my cousin's wedding, dressed in a midnight blue suit and emotionally bulletproof. They hadn't seen me yet. But they would. The wedding was at some historic estate in Virginia. White columns, hydrangeas the size of small children, a quartet playing Vivaldi like it was a competition. I showed up early enough to park without being blocked in, late enough to avoid idle chatter with relatives I hadn't spoken to since high school. The guest list topped 250. Luke, my cousin and the closest thing I had to a brother growing up, was marrying Sophie, a sweetheart from his med school. I came for him. Not for the reconciliation I knew someone would try to orchestrate like a party trick. From across the lawn, I saw them. My mother stood under a white umbrella, hands fluttering as she laughed at something Olivia said. Olivia, of course, was flawless in that way that made you wonder what her skincare regimen was and how many mirrors she owned. Her husband Ryan stood beside her, checking his phone like it owed him money. My father had grayed more than I remembered. His posture was slightly stooped. But it was unmistakably him. I watched them the way an anthropologist observes a forgotten tribe. When the ceremony began, I sat in the back row. Not hiding. Just distant. Luke and Sophie exchanged vows under a flowered arch that looked like it had been flown in from Tuscany. She cried. He nearly dropped the ring. It was perfect. The reception was a blur of string lights, champagne, and miniature crab cakes. I chatted with a few of Luke's college buddies, dodging questions about family like a boxer weaving through jabs. Then, during the second toast, some long-winded story from Sophie's cousin about backpacking through Europe, I felt a hand on my shoulder. "Jake?" My mother's voice, brittle with disbelief. I turned slowly, champagne in hand, and met her eyes. "Hi, Mom." She stared at me like I was a ghost. My father stepped up beside her. "Son, you're here." "Yeah. I RSVP'd. Luke asked me to come. They blinked, as if my presence needed justification. You look grown, my mom said, her voice cracking on the last word. It's been 6 years, I said evenly. People age. My father's mouth opened, then closed. Beside them, Olivia hovered like a scented shadow, not quite part of the conversation, but not missing a word. We didn't know you were coming, my mother said. Of course you didn't, I said, sipping my champagne. You'd have made other plans. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Jake, don't. You mean like how you made other plans on the day I graduated MIT with highest honors? Remember that? Her face paled. My father looked down at the grass like it might offer him an escape tunnel. Olivia spoke soft and rehearsed. It was my recital. The schedule changed last minute. I turned to her, smiling without humor. Yes. You were breathtaking in your tutu. I got a voicemail. My mom's voice wavered. We didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't mean to miss the biggest day of my life, I said calmly. But you did. And then you acted like I was the one being dramatic for not wanting to watch the footage of your other child spinning in circles on a community stage. Jake, my father said, his voice gravel now. Can't we just put this behind us? You've already put it behind you, I said. You forgot it before the curtain call. I left them standing there in their designer shoes in regret, mouths full of apologies they'd never practiced. I walked straight to Luke and asked him to dance. The first note of the song hit, and Luke grinned like he was 12 again, sneaking extra cookies at Grandma's house. I can't believe you came, he said, pulling me into the sway of the music. I mean, I hoped. But I didn't expect it. You asked? I said simply. And you never made me feel like a side character. He looked down, like my words hit harder than the bass line. I always looked up to you, you know. MIT, that startup you worked on, the stuff James told me. You made it out. You made it big. I shrugged. I made it far. That's not always the same thing. We danced in easy silence, the kind that only happens with someone who doesn't need you to explain your damage in small, apologetic pieces. Sophie joined us halfway through, looping an arm around Luke's waist and giving me a warm, real smile, the kind of look you only get from someone who's heard good stories about you behind your back. The rest of the reception felt like a test I'd studied for. My parents circled the dance floor like indecisive bees. Olivia lingered by the dessert table, her eyes tracking me with surgical precision. They didn't approach again. But I could feel the pressure building like a kettle on a silent boil. And then, after the bouquet toss and right before cake, it happened. Uncle James took the mic. Before we cut into this towering sugar masterpiece, he began. I just want to say a few words. Not just as Luke's dad, but as someone who's watched this family grow, and sometimes struggle to do it right. He glanced across the room, eyes catching mine for half a beat. We don't always show up for the people who deserve it, he said, letting the sentence hang there. But sometimes, if we're lucky, they show up for us anyway. Polite applause followed. Some real. Some confused. I held his gaze, gave a half nod. He nodded back. Message received. But then Olivia walked over. She looked older. Tired. Like the years hadn't quite gone how she'd expected. Can we talk? Here? Somewhere quiet, she said, already walking toward the veranda. I followed because I was curious. Not generous. Not forgiving. Just curious. We stepped out into the thick Virginia air, stars barely visible through the tree canopy. She turned to face me, hands wringing. I didn't know, she said. Didn't know what? That it hurt you. That badly. I thought, she faltered. I thought you were fine. That was the problem, I said. You all did. She bit her lip. I didn't ask them to skip your graduation. I swear. I didn't even want them to come. I was already 18, Jake. It was just some recital. But they made it everything. I cut in. Just like they always did. She nodded, slowly. I see it now. I didn't then. I was too busy being chosen. You were the golden child. I said. That wasn't your fault. But you sure didn't seem to mind it. She looked like she'd been slapped. I didn't ask for it. No. I agreed. But you benefited from it. And you never once asked why I didn't? A long pause stretched between us. I'm sorry, she whispered. For all of it. I studied her for a moment. She looked sincere. Small, even. But still not someone I could let back in. Thank you, I said. But I'm not doing reunions. I'm not interested in rebuilding what never really existed. Olivia nodded, tears threatening. I get it. I don't think you do. But that's okay. And then I turned and walked back inside, leaving my sister under the stars with her apology still clutched in her palms. It was the first time in my life I didn't feel guilty for walking away. Back inside, the reception had tipped from sentimental to celebratory. The band had shifted gears into Motown, couples were dancing with abandon, and someone's toddler had stolen the spotlight with a single shoe and wild rhythm. I watched from the edge, champagne flute in hand, feeling a strange calm settle over me. I had done the hard thing. I had returned. Not to forgive. Not to mend. But to stand in the room and prove to myself that I didn't need anyone's approval to be whole. Uncle James found me near the open bar, sipping slowly. He leaned in close like he was sharing a secret. They saw your name in Wired, you know, he murmured. Your mom printed the article and keeps it in a drawer like a report card. I raised an eyebrow. And yet not a single message until now. He shrugged. Pride's a hell of a thing. So is denial. I let out a breath that almost became a laugh. Too little, too late. He nodded. You don't owe them anything. Not even anger. That stopped me cold. I thought you might say I should forgive them. Nope. I've watched you claw your way into a life they never lifted a finger to help build. You don't need to carry their guilt like a backpack. Let them sit in the empty seats they left behind. God, that hit like gospel. I gave him a grateful pat on the back. You ever think of becoming a therapist? Not enough patience. But I make a hell of a speech at weddings. The rest of the evening blurred, photos, cake, and Aunt trying to set me up with the wedding planner. I danced twice, once with the bride, once with Luke's 90-year-old grandmother who claimed I had too much tension in the hips for someone so young. My parents kept their distance. Occasionally I'd catch them watching me, my mother with damp eyes, my father with the haunted stare of someone realizing their empire was built on the wrong child. When the DJ announced the last song, I slipped away. No hugs. No goodbyes. Just a quiet exit through the garden gate, the soft thump of bass fading behind me. Back at the hotel, I kicked off my shoes and sat on the balcony with a glass of Pinot Noir and the night breeze. It smelled like magnolia and liberation. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Jake. It's Dad. Please don't block this one. Just 1 minute? I stared at it. Not with anger. Not even with dread. Just with a deep, settled clarity that surprised me. Then I typed out a reply. Tomorrow morning. 1 call. That's all you get. Because some ghosts deserve to be faced in the daylight. The call came at 9:02 a.m. I'd already finished my hotel breakfast, black coffee, steel-cut oats, and half a grapefruit, which made me feel smug and middle-aged. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, watching the caller ID flash, unknown number. I answered on the 3rd ring. Jake, my father said, voice stiff, rehearsed. Thank you for picking up. I said nothing. Silence has weight, and this one fell hard between us. He cleared his throat. I saw you yesterday. He paused. You look successful. I could practically hear him scrolling through a mental checklist, job title, suit, haircut, posture. Things he could quantify. I am, I said simply. Another pause. Your mother and I talked last night. About everything. Graduation. The way we handled things. Olivia. You. Handled? I repeated, dry as bone. We failed you. He admitted. We know that now. It wasn't just the graduation. It was years. Choices we made. Things we didn't see. I said nothing. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I'd already said it. In 1,000 different ways. In silence, in absence, in becoming the man I was without them. We thought you were the strong one. He continued. That you didn't need as much. That you'd understand. There it was again. The myth of my strength as an excuse for their neglect. You know, I said slowly, that line, "You're the strong one," was just your permission slip to ignore me. Every time you said it, you meant we can disappoint you and you'll survive it. And you were right. I did survive it. He was quiet for a long time. I don't expect you to forgive us, he said eventually. But I wanted you to know, we regret it. Deeply. I believed him. That didn't make it enough. I'm not angry anymore, I said. But I also don't feel connected. You're strangers. You share my DNA and a history I had to recover from. That's all. But Jake, we're your parents. You were my parents. Now you're just people I used to know. He exhaled, like I'd punched him in the gut. I had to watch you from across a wedding yesterday, he said, voice raw now. And it hit me. I don't even know who you are anymore. I gave him the only truth I had. That's because I built a life you were never part of. We ended the call soon after. No shouting. No catharsis. Just an overdue reckoning. He'd finally said sorry. I'd finally said goodbye. And for the first time in years, it felt like the story had turned a page. Back in Seattle, life resumed like I'd never left. Emails, sprints, code reviews, back-to-back meetings. My office overlooked the bay, the water a constant, calming hum beneath the chaos of engineering deadlines and innovation pitches. Outside my window, ferries drifted past like punctuation marks in a long sentence I was finally writing on my own terms. I told no one about the call. Not even Rachel. The past belonged in the past, and I'd already wasted too many years dragging it behind me like a splintered anchor. But then came the envelope. A thick, cream-colored letter waiting in my apartment mailbox a week later. No return address. Handwritten in my mother's elegant cursive. The same handwriting that used to label Olivia's recital costumes with glitter and careful loops. I stood in my kitchen, coffee cooling, envelope trembling slightly in my hands. I didn't open it right away. I stared at it for a while, like it might combust. Then I sliced it open with a letter opener I'd bought purely for aesthetics. The letter was 5 pages long. It started with, "Jake, I don't expect you to read this all at once. But I hope someday you do." She went on to recount her version of the years I'd already lived, Olivia's tantrums, my quiet strength, their financial panic, the impossible juggle. There were apologies peppered throughout, like raisins in a loaf of stale bread. But it was this line that stopped me cold. "We loved you. We just didn't know how to show up for you because we assumed you didn't need us." I read that twice. Then once more. It was the most honest thing she'd ever written. And it landed like grief. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't feel vindicated. I just sat there at my kitchen counter, surrounded by ceramic mugs and clean countertops, realizing something that felt obvious in hindsight. They had mistaken my silence for stability. My success for immunity. My independence for invisibility. I folded the letter neatly, slid it back into its envelope, and placed it in the drawer with my old MIT ID and a photo of me in my cap and gown, smiling alone. Later that night, Rachel dropped by with Thai takeout and a bottle of wine. "How was the wedding?" she asked, halfway through a drunken noodle. "Necessary," I said. She didn't push for more. That's the thing about real friends. They don't need a full story to hold space for your silence. We sat on the couch watching a crime doc neither of us cared about, Tesla, my cat, not the car, curled up on my lap, and I realized this was what healing looked like. Not a grand reunion. Not a family dinner. Just a quiet evening in a home I built for myself, surrounded by people, and creatures, who showed up. No recital. No spotlight. Just enough. It was late October when the email came. Subject line, Women in Tech Conference, Keynote Speaker Invitation. I thought it was spam at first. The kind of generic flattery wrapped around a pay-to-speak scheme. But then I read the body. Legit organization. Legit venue. San Francisco. 3,000 attendees. They wanted me to headline a talk on engineering success without a safety net. I stared at the screen, heart skipping the way it hadn't since finals week at MIT. I didn't have to think long. I accepted. For the next 6 weeks, I worked during the day and wrote at night. Drafts filled my notes app. Sticky notes appeared on my fridge, on my bathroom mirror, beside my bed. I wasn't writing a TED Talk. I was writing my talk. The story I'd never told out loud. I practiced in front of Rachel once. She cried twice and threw a pillow at me for not warning her it would be so damn real. On the flight to San Francisco, I didn't sleep. I watched the clouds roll beneath the wings and thought of that day at MIT, standing alone on the lawn while someone else's family took photos. How that pain had hardened into purpose. How the silence back then had become the sound of me learning to speak for myself. The conference was everything they promised and more: high ceilings, nervous buzz, tech giants with name tags, women who looked like they'd bent the world just enough to fit them into it. When they introduced me, they read out my 4 patents. My directorship. The startups I'd mentored. But none of it felt as significant as the moment I walked to the podium, took a breath, and said, "Hi, I'm Jake. I was raised to be invisible." The room went still. And for the next 28 minutes, I told the truth. About the graduation no one came to. About the recital that mattered more. About building a life from scratch, with no blueprint and no applause. About learning that worth doesn't require permission. That family can be fuel or fire, and that sometimes it's both. When I stepped down, the standing ovation wasn't polite. It was visceral. Women lined up to hug me. One sobbed against my blazer and whispered, "Thank you? Now I know it's not just me." Later that night, back in the hotel, I posted a photo of the view from my room. Caption: 6 years ago, I stood on a campus lawn with no one clapping. Today, I stood on a stage with 3,000 strangers applauding my story. Worth isn't given. It's claimed. In the morning, the post had over 10,000 likes. Olivia liked it too. No comment. No DM. Just a quiet click of recognition. And weirdly, that was enough. 2 weeks later, Uncle James called me. I was elbow deep in debugging a faulty driver loop when his name lit up my phone. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something told me to pick up. "Jake," he said, voice low. "Your dad had a heart attack this morning." I froze. My first instinct wasn't fear. It wasn't even sadness. It was dread. "He's stable," James added quickly. "In the ICU." But it was serious. I leaned back in my chair, mind blanking. "Your mother asked me to call you," he continued. "She thought, maybe you'd want to know." I rubbed my face. "Where?" "Richmond General." "Do they want me to come?" There was a pause on his end. "He's asking for you." I stared at the corner of my desk, the edge where paint had chipped off. I remembered tracing it with a pencil during long late nights. I'd been so busy building a life they weren't in, I never planned for the possibility that they might want back in. "James," I said finally, "what do you think I should do?" He didn't answer immediately. "That depends," he said at last. "Are you going because you need closure or because they do?" That question stuck in my throat all night. I didn't sleep. I watched rain bead on the windows, Tesla curled up on my feet, the city glowing silently in the background. By morning I had my answer. I didn't go. Instead, I sent a bouquet of white lilies to the hospital with a simple note. "Wishing you a smooth recovery. Jake." No flourish. No warmth. Just appropriate. Professional. Distant. Later that evening, James called again. "She was furious," he said, dryly amused. "Your mother said you sent flowers? She expected you at his bedside." "And what did he say?" James hesitated. "He cried," he said, "when he saw them. Not because he was moved. Because he knew that was all he'd get." I nodded slowly. "That's about right. They're hurting," James added gently. "I'm not their painkiller." "No," he said. "You're not." I hung up and poured myself a glass of red. Not as a toast, not as revenge. Just because it was a Tuesday, and I was alive, and that was enough. That night, Olivia posted a photo on Instagram, my parents, arm in arm at the hospital, smiling weakly. The caption read, 3 generations strong. Love always wins. I wasn't in the photo. I wasn't even in the idea of it. And you know what? I didn't care. I scrolled past it like an ad I'd seen 1,000 times before. Because love doesn't always win. But boundaries? Boundaries make sure you survive. The story went viral before I realized it was even a story. A few weeks after the keynote, I wrote a personal essay, something raw, vulnerable, and sharper than anything I'd ever coded. I titled it, "The Graduation No One Came to: Building a Life Without Applause." I posted it late one night on LinkedIn of all places, thinking maybe a handful of people might relate. By noon the next day, it had 100,000 views. By the end of the week, it had hit 1 million. Tech blogs picked it up. Podcasts quoted it. Someone called it the manifesto for overlooked kids who build empires from silence. I was invited to do interviews, panels, TEDx talks. A journalist from The Atlantic asked if I wanted to turn it into a book. And through it all, the messages flooded in. A girl from Ohio who said her parents forgot her birthday every year since she turned 10. A guy in his 30s whose family still referred to him as the quiet one, like it was a flaw. A mom who'd finally left a marriage where her daughter was always second best. It hit a nerve. Not because I was special, but because my story was disturbingly common. And for the first time, my isolation felt crowded. In the best way. Of course, my parents saw it too. James confirmed it in one of our monthly check-ins. "They're not taking it well," he said flatly. "Your dad said you made them look like villains. Your mom cried for hours. They made themselves look that way," I replied. James didn't argue. "They think you're punishing them," he added. "No," I said. "I'm just living without them. That's not punishment. That's consequence." He paused, then said quietly, "You know what I think hurts them most?" "What?" "That you're thriving. That you made it all the way here without them, and now you're telling the world." I didn't feel triumphant. Just clear. Because that was the whole truth of it. I hadn't just survived without them. I had excelled. Every patent. Every promotion. Every keynote. Every quiet night of peace they never gave me. It was all mine. Unshared. Unborrowed. Unapologetically mine. And they couldn't stand that. Back at home, Tesla meowed at my feet as I added a new frame to the shelf above my desk. Inside it, a screen cap of the essay's title page and a printed comment that simply read, "I thought I was alone. Thank you for proving I'm not." It hung next to the photo of me at MIT, still alone, still grinning. I smiled again, this time not for the camera. Just for me. 6 years ago, I stood on the lawn at MIT in a black cap and gown, alone, scanning the crowd for 2 people who never showed up. I remember the sun on my neck. The ache in my chest. The way my smile felt like glass I'd forced myself to wear. Now I wake up beside someone who kisses me on the forehead before coffee. Daniel, freelance photographer, spontaneous, endlessly patient. He was the first person I dated who didn't try to fix me. Who didn't see me as a project or a puzzle with a missing piece. When I told him about the graduation, the recital, the silence that followed, he didn't offer solutions or platitudes. He just said, "That sounds like it hurt like hell," and held me until I forgot I'd ever had to explain myself. We live in a 2-bedroom apartment overlooking Puget Sound. I turned the second room into an office/hobby space. On the wall above my desk hang 3 things. My MIT diploma. A framed screenshot of my viral essay headline. A photo from the Women in Tech conference, me at the podium, arms wide, mid-sentence. No family portraits. No childhood memories. No reminders of a house where my name was always the one forgotten on the RSVP. My cat, Tesla, has claimed the left arm of the couch. She's moody and dramatic, but we get each other. Every morning she waits by the window for sunbeams. That kind of optimism is contagious. In 2026, I co-founded a nonprofit with Rachel and Priya, from the old job, called Second Seat. It's for underrepresented tech students from undersupported families. We offer mentorship, scholarships, and, most importantly, someone in your corner when you walk the stage and no one claps. We fund it with 3% of my company's annual profit. That was non-negotiable when I renegotiated my equity. I told my investors, "You want me? You take the mission too." They signed. Sometimes I think about the version of me who would have begged for that deal. The version who believed success only mattered if your parents were there to see it. That version doesn't exist anymore. He was rewritten one patent at a time, one boundary at a time, one lonely milestone turned sacred ritual. As for my parents, they're still alive. I hear about them through Uncle James, still in the same house, same routines. My mom retired early. My dad's health is shaky. Olivia moved back in for a bit, then back out. She sells real estate now. She sent me a Christmas card last year. I didn't open it. I don't hate them. I just don't need them. And that's the secret no one tells you. Healing isn't about reconciliation. It's about reclamation. Of your time. Your peace. Your voice. And your silence. Because silence can be holy when it's not forced. When it's chosen. The last time I heard my mother's voice was over the phone, her asking, "Can't we start over?" And I said, "We never started to begin with." Then I hung up. Not in anger. Not in revenge. But in relief. Because I no longer live in the waiting room of their affection. I live in a place I built with my own hands, with people who show up, who clap, who see me. This morning, I got an email from a girl named Ava in Arkansas. She's 17. Her parents told her tech wasn't for girls. She read my essay and built her first website that night. Her subject line was just one word. Thanks. I sat back in my chair, turned to the window, and looked out at the water. The same view I dreamed of when I was coding at midnight on a mattress with springs in my spine. And I thought, this is it. This is the life I built when no one was watching. They missed the moment. But I never missed myself. And I never will again.